Welcome to this edition of On Point with Karthike. We will talk about the issue of caste census. Every political party agrees that the caste census is important. Some political parties organize caste census through their state government, but they have not revealed the data. Why has caste census become so politically controversial? On this issue, I'm joined by Professor Ashwini Kumar, Dean of Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Thank you very much for giving me time on this issue. And let me straight away ask you this question. What makes caste census so important?
Thank you, Karthike, for inviting me to share my a little bit of wisdom on this issue. As a political scientist, caste census, always controversial, if not sensational. Caste census means that we start counting everyone in terms of the caste. So, and also most importantly, caste census is part of the larger unfolding of democratization in the country. And if you look at, caste census is linked to the caste politics, and caste politics is part of the larger game of electoral politics in the country. Therefore, caste census has been very, very important, if not controversial, since the early days of independence. And that's one of the reasons why caste census was closed, in the sense of not counting OBC. We have been counting, Karthike, always SC and ST. After 1931 and during the Second World War, 1941, we actually counted, Karthike, OBC and everyone as part of the census. But the so-called caste census is part of the larger census. So, and especially after the Mandal Revolution in the 90s, caste census has become very, very significant. In fact, has come to haunt every politician, every policymaker identifying, beneficiary for the welfare schemes here.
But if it is so important, but if it is so important for the beneficiaries in context of the scheme, then why isn't it being made public or being conducted extensively for the state to discharge its duties?
I think there is a little bit of myth here that we have not been counting castes. On the other hand, if you remember 2001 census, there was a huge debate, academic debate, policy debate, and led to passionate discussion about why not count every caste in terms of the census, because that will lead to more effective, efficient targeting of beneficiaries, and also help us to introduce more equity-based welfare policies, if not the caste politics. So therefore, I think it's a misnomer that we have not been confronting the caste census. Secondly, if you remember in the UPA 2, I recall it very vividly as I was part of the NRG implementation in the country. We have done, socioeconomic survey based on the caste. And thirdly, if you look at the data, school data at the primary level, maintained by the district school data MIS system, we have been counting castes. Fourthly, if you look at the data available with universities and colleges, we are looking at, since 2008 implementation of OBC reservation extending to the college admission and university admission. So, Karthike, first thing we have to remove and dispel the myth that we have not been counting caste, as part of the larger exercise of the census.
What is at the heart of the issue? Then where is the fear?
The fear is quite obvious, Karthike. I mean, the fear is coming not from the majority. The fear is coming from the minority. Minority and majority in terms of the numbers, in terms of the elite caste, the upper caste, and partly also the fear is coming from the alleged domination of OBC if the caste census is implemented. As a political scientist, I recall the classic work of our iconic professor Rajni Kothari, Caste and Politics. So since those days, there has been some kind of air of uncertainty and controversy about if we start counting caste as part of the census, then the country will be riven, or perhaps will split into majority and minority caste, the dominant caste, that's, I think, also been fueled by the large growing middle class, urban middle class, which are primarily upper caste.
Are you saying that the census might produce a new type of politics?
In fact, I have been arguing a little differently, Karthikeya. I think if they accept my recommendation and my ideas, I think counting caste will lead to a better and far more equitable democracy in the country. It means in the larger context, using the idea of associational or power sharing democracies around the world, I think India will become a more durable, efficient uh, power sharing democracy. The biggest issue that is causing fear and controversy in many quarters is about the inequitable distribution of power arrangements in the democracy, Kartike. So it is very important for us to start thinking about it in terms of the caste census, so that not only politics, but economy, culture, and various other parts of the society untouched by Mandal Revolution will start doing a much better and efficient power sharing settlements.
But the detractors would say that it would completely lead to obesification of the Indian politics.
There is certainly, I think, there is a merit in this, what you are suggesting, that it might lead to, the dominance by the dominant caste. This is the phrase used by legendary sociologist M.S. Srinivas, that a dominance by dominant caste. But my sense is that, as we look at the practices of democracy, and as we look at, something that I think, Karthik, commentators and the scholars are not examining and not reflecting back on the experience of Panchayati Raj. If we look at Panchayati Raj experience around in 3 lakh panchayats in the country, which has very successfully implemented OBC reservation based on rotation, SC, ST, and also women reservation. One of the issues that we don't talk about, women reservation in the parliament and state assemblies. So once we count census, or once we count the caste in terms of the caste census, I think there will be a larger implication for gender justice in the country, which has not been touched and talked about in the public.
You're talking about gender justice, but with the gender, there are other issues. For example, I would say, will census solidify the idea and identity of caste? Wouldn't you agree?
I would say that for the time being, it looks like, but if you look at what I call sociological caste and political caste, my sense is that the days of sociological caste in terms of ritual purity and pollution are over irreversibly. Democracy has taken care of that through a bloodless revolution. I call it Mandal Revolution and Revolution. The part that we are talking about today is political caste, democratic caste. And my sense is that because of the whole idea of electoral democracy, which not only leads to consolidation of caste, but also building new alliances around the caste, fluidity, uncertainty, which are part of the dilemmas of democracy, Karthikeya. So my sense is that it might give a false sense of solidification, but ultimately, the electoral democracies are very unpredictable, notoriously unpredictable. So caste alliances are temporary. Caste alliances are short-term alliances in democracy. And in a multi-party system in India, I don't anticipate the dominance of one single caste or one single community through electoral practices.
And I would add an argument here that a lot of people would say that the biggest challenge on caste census might come from the proponents of hindutva, because the fact that hindutva as an ideology overrides, papers over the issue of caste. Now, if you have caste as the moving momentum, even for a time being, in Indian democracy, then I would say that it might create a challenge for political hindutva.
It is indeed. It is indeed. I agree with you. It is indeed that not just Hindutva, Karthike. There is a challenge here, larger challenge for liberal, Marxist, and Hindutvas. In fact, I have been mentioning about it that the caste-based census will lead to larger churning of the democratic processes in the country. So not just Hindutva will be affected, but liberals, and especially Lutheran liberals. They are called some Lutheran liberals, and they and Marxist, will be affected too. Coming back to the
How can you just
challenges
explain
for
it? Can you just explain it how both political hindutva and the Lutyens liberals will be affected? Can you just elaborate on
yeah,
it?
yeah. Yeah. See, the first thing is that this will spell perhaps, kind of an end of Nehruvian dream of building India a caste-free republic. That's a fallacy in the Nehruvian dream, I would say. With due reference and reference to Nehru's ideality about building India as a caste-based society. India continues to be a caste-based society, caste-based in the sense of the democratic caste system. And secondly, coming back to the Hindutva, so the liberals need to revise their understanding about what they mean by casteless society or classless society. Unless we reorder the society as per the caste-based census, India will not be heading towards a more egalitarian society in the sense of dreams of Baba Sahib Ambedkar. Secondly, coming back to the Hindutva challenges, for Hindutva, there seems to be a large challenge. If you look at UP Assembly election data, it seems that despite the rise and resurgence of the OBC or the Mandal caste in UP Assembly elections, you have noticed that upper caste have made a strong comeback. They're about 22%. Almost, there is a parity between demographic status of the upper caste and the electoral status of the upper caste. And thirdly, the larger ideological challenges. It seems to me that the larger narrative of Hindutva will have to embrace the idea of caste. Otherwise, the Hindutva idea based on, religious nationalism will not survive the challenges of electoral democracy.
But don't you think that they have already done it? All the Hindu icons of Bharatiya Janata Party are OBCs. Kalyan Singh, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Shivraj Singh Chauhan, Vasundhara Raje Scindia, all OBC leaders.
Yeah, but this is true. This is true. In fact, if you look at the BJP and RSS strategy around the country, and especially in South India, this has already been settled. But in North India, BJP will have to make a little more effort to embrace caste as part of the larger Hindu narrative. So they are making all efforts. They are making all efforts to embrace OBC icons. And at the same time, if you look at, they're also trying to fragment the large block of OBC. Just look at the appointment of Rohini Commission, by this government in 2017, and thinking about categorization, subcategorization, four-tiered, four-layered OBC system of reservation. So look at, on the one hand, the ideological attempt to embrace caste as part of the larger Hindu narrative. Otherwise, Karthika, it will become very difficult for lower OBC and upper OBC to be part of the larger Hindu narrative.
In absence of a caste census, unless and until you quantify
in the absence of a caste census.
Extremely backward castes.
Yes, very true.
And my last question to you, do you think that the new data can create a situation where this 50% mark can get breached?
Yeah, surely. I mean, like I have been suggesting very strongly that the 50% cap is a completely artificial cap. And it was a politically expedient move by the judges and the Supreme Court and the courts. Therefore, it has to go. The sooner the better. So once the caste, if you look at the little bit of history of Mandal Commission, Kelkar Commission, and in the past exercises done in order to implement social justice agenda, you will notice that they have done in the absence of the caste census. But we do have 1931 census, which effectively refers to the population of OBC, about 52-54%, and which is not very scientifically reliable, but it's still approximate enough that we can rely on it, and Mandal Commission has done it. But based on that, 27% reservation is a completely Karthike, is not understandable. And if you look at what I call constitutional lodestar, the case of Tamil Nadu, 69% Karthike, for last 3 decades, it has been challenged, but it still continues. Mm-hmm. Even in the Indra Sahani case, Supreme Court did not say that it's illegal, unconstitutional, but still sitting on that. So therefore, I think the country will learn, Karthike, to conclude, I guess, at this point, from three important issues. One, the Tamil Nadu 69%. Second, from Nitish Kumar model of subcategorization. And third, people are not talking about Hukum Singh Commission report, which emphasized on the subcategorizations. I think they are going to be the future models for OBC politics or OBC consolidation in settlement of Indian democracy.
Thank you, Ashwini ji, for making time for this special episode of On Point with Karthike. So this was a special chat on the issue of caste census and how caste census can actually be or become a political challenge for both political hindutva and the liberal politics in context of the ideals they profess. So this is all. For more news and other stories, keep on watching TV9 Digital. Thank you.